If you ask me, the Lakers have had a pretty good offseason, managing to address nearly every major need on their team and doing it without giving up a single trade asset. Very impressive. Getting their new starting center with DeAndre Ayton, getting a good point of attack defender that can also be a good playmaking option with Marcus Smart, kind of replacing Dorian Finney-Smith, doing it in part with Jake LaRavia, a young potential 3&D wing with upside, though that final need is not fully addressed yet in my opinion. That being a reliable, true 3&D wing option. Yes, like I said, they kind of have it with Jake LaRavia, hopefully he can eventually become that, but he's not that quite yet. And with neither Rui Hachimura nor Jared Vanderbilt being that, Hachimura having the offensive part down but not the defensive part, Vanderbilt having the defensive part down but not the offensive part, they could definitely use one more 3&D option and a more proven 3&D option too. So with that in mind here, what's even left for them on both the open market and the trade market to potentially address that need? Could they even do it? Could they do it with a free agent, a buyout candidate, a trade candidate, maybe even a two-way contract candidate? Maybe. So we're going to talk about that, talk about a potential 3&D option at everything from a two-way contract, a current free agent, a buyout candidate, and a trade candidate that likely would be available at this very moment. Now keep in mind that they can't sign a free agent nor a buyout candidate quite yet. They don't have the first apron space to do it. Right now they're only roughly 1.1 million below the first apron and they have to stay below it. So barring them making a salary dump move or waiting until roughly January to sign a free agent, they can't do that quite yet. But given that they do make a salary dump or a trade that actually frees up more first apron space, then they could go that route. But if you're talking about simply a two-way contract or making a trade, they could do that right now. So again, keep that in mind here, but we're going to talk about how they can do this at every spot. A two-way contract, a free agent, a buyout candidate, and a trade candidate. So beginning with the two-way contract, they're obviously not going to address their major need with it. A two-way contract player is more of a kind of backup option, more of a player that spends time with both the G League team and the NBA team, might play some minutes here and there, could potentially move up and actually impress the head coach and potentially get playing time that way, but they're more likely a backup option and more of an injury replacement. However, it definitely can happen and we've seen it on their team directly, coming with a guy like Alex Caruso for example, Austin Reeves, so don't overlook the two-way contracts. And one potential 3&D option that could be had for a two-way contract is a guy like Jalen Bridges. Going undrafted in the 2024 NBA draft out of Baylor, spending last season on a two-way contract with the Phoenix Suns, but they chose not to renew his two-way contract, therefore making him a free agent, and he currently is a free agent too. And while spending last season with their G League team, he really did play well on both ends of the court, averaging roughly 14 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game, over 1 steal per game, nearly 1 block per game, shooting roughly 39% from 3 on 7 3-point shot attempts per game. That absolutely screams 3&D value to me. Then factor in his 6'8" frame, roughly a 7-foot wingspan, a 225-pound frame, and you have all the makings of a prototypical 3&D wing option that could potentially be a good two-way option too. He's shown it at both the G League level, the Summer League level, the college level. Now he's looking for an opportunity to show it at the NBA level, and in my opinion, he might not be that far away from doing it. I mean, he is a little bit older for a second-year player. That's not really a bad thing in my opinion, and actually points to him probably being more NBA ready, definitely having more NBA ready body, which is kind of what you want for a 3&D wing. I like the upside here with Jalen Bridges, would have the 3-point shooting part down, is able to match up 2 through 4, and even at the NBA level in my opinion, so I think he would be a pretty good option. A guy that could definitely be an injury replacement, has untapped potential yet, but is definitely NBA ready to fill a small role. I would like to see them pick up Jalen Bridges with their available two-way contract. Now he definitely wouldn't be my only option for a 3&D wing, probably my favorite at this point, but they actually have one on their very own training camp roster, that player being Arthur Kluma, a guy that played with their Summer League team, a guy they directly extended an Exhibit 10 contract to, that being a training camp invite. He didn't play much throughout Summer League, but when he did play, he did show some 3&D ability, guarding everyone from shooting guards, small forwards, power forwards, even playing some small ball center for their team, showing the ability to knock down an open 3-point shot, which he also showed throughout college. So these would probably be my top 2 candidates. Either they want to keep it in-house with a guy like Arthur Kluma, maybe give him a two-way contract if he looks good throughout training camp, or go with a guy that showed it for a different team like Jalen Bridges, both of which I would be open to, and both of which I think could be good two-way contract candidates with good 3&D upside. Though apart from a two-way contract, as that probably wouldn't be enough to directly address their need for a 3&D wing, yes, it would be a great injury replacement and potentially a guy that could climb through the rotation, but for a player that would actually be on their 15-man roster, we'd have to look to the open market. And well, the closest thing left to a 3&D wing, especially if you're talking about a big 6'7" or taller 3&D wing, would probably have to be Amir Coffey. I know I've talked about him and you've probably heard me talk about him if you kept up with the channel, but in my opinion he's probably the best option left. Definitely the best big option that's a good 3-point shooter, coming off a season of shooting 41% from 3 with the LA Clippers last season, also being a decent defender. Wouldn't call him a great defender and definitely not a primary defensive option, but he's at least around average, and definitely good enough to qualify for a 3&D wing. Last season posting a negative 0.2 defensive BPM, not terrible, but again also not great, simply around average. Combining that with the 3-point shooting ability though, with the offensive ability in general, ability to play off the ball and simply play off of guys like LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reeves, I would like the addition of Amir Coffey. I mean, you can kind of argue that they do need more 3-point shooting. Following the additions of Marcus Smart, DeAndre Ayton, and Jake LaRavia, that's not a whole lot of reliable or proven 3-point shooting. Yes, LaRavia did shoot 42% from 3 last season, but that was the first time he shot above 35% from 3, also the first time they played above 50 games, so then factor in Marcus Smart not being a great 3-point shooter, Ayton not being a 3-point shooter, other guys in the rotation like Vanderbilt and Hayes not being 3-point shooters, they might need a little bit more reliable 3-point shooting. And well, that's something that Amir Coffey definitely could offer. Again, with at least decent and average defense come with it, I think he'd be a pretty good fit for the rotation. Though if they don't want to go the free agent route and then want to wait again for a buyout candidate or a potential buyout option, I do have two that kind of fit the 3&D mold. You know, one's more defensive option, one's more of an offensive option, but I wouldn't be shocked if they both eventually get bought out. The first of which being Kyle Anderson, this being more of the defensive option, Anderson being a very good and actually very underrated defender in my opinion. You know, when you think of a good defensive wing, he might not immediately pop into your head, but he actually is very good and very versatile defensively. Last season posting a plus 2.2 defensive BPM, having a plus 2.5 career defensive BPM, very impressive. Being able to defend again anywhere 2 through 4, even small ball centers at times, and he showed that with the Timberwolves in the 2024 NBA playoffs. Also being a decent 3-point shooter, definitely a low volume and a very awkward shooting motion 3-point shooter, but it does get the job done. With Kyle Anderson shooting 35.2% from 3, dating back to the 2020-2021 NBA season. Again, not great, but good enough to get the job done and to qualify for a 3&D wing. So if he would hit the buyout market, which I wouldn't be shocked after being traded to Utah and pretty much having no future with their team, I think he'd be a decent option that might be a defensive upgrade for their team, wouldn't be an offensive liability, especially with the good passing ability and good playmaking ability to come with him. I wouldn't mind the option of slow-mo Kyle Anderson. In fact, I might even be for it. But if not for Kyle Anderson and they're hoping for a bigger fish off the buyout market, then they might eventually be able to try and get Chris Middleton. Also playing for a rebuilding team that he has no future with, that being Washington, I wouldn't be shocked if he eventually and actually pretty quickly gets bought out. Reports even indicate that he likely will. Maybe he might hit the buyout market soon, maybe it might take until the trade deadline, but it will happen sooner rather than later. And well, for Chris Middleton, we all know the issue with him, that being health and durability. Only playing 55 games last year, actually 37, scratch that, 55 back in 23-24, only playing 33 back in 22-23. But when he's on the court, he's still very effective and actually on both ends of the court too. Obviously not what he was on defense like he was back in his prime, but still around average defensively. Then couple that with the great offensive ability, 3-point shooting ability, scoring ability, even passing ability, he still does qualify for 3&D or simply a two-way option. I think Chris Middleton would be a decent fit. You know, he definitely would take playing time away from both Jake LaRavia and Rui Hachimura, and would also be the kind of signing that at his stature and with the resume that would come with him, being a 3-time All-Star, he would expect some kind of role and some kind of guaranteed playing time, which wouldn't be the case with maybe an Amir Coffey or Kyle Anderson, or the Jalen Bridges for a two-way contract for that fact. It might be a bit more difficult, but it would be an option that they probably couldn't say no to, especially if Luka Doncic would recruit him like he did with DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart. However, if they don't want to go that route or strike out on all three of Chris Middleton, Kyle Anderson, and Amir Coffey, then maybe going the trade market route and trying to trade for a 3&D wing option that can immediately help their team out, which could potentially be a guy like Matisse Thybulle. You know, I would mention Andrew Wiggins, but I don't think he's really on the trade market at this point, and definitely not for a good price, so if we're talking about a realistic and actually attainable option for the Lakers to get here, I'd point to a guy like Matisse Thybulle. You know, he's coming off a year playing only 15 games, but that would actually probably help him be easier to trade for, more attainable through a trade, and I'm really not too worried about it because he had never played below 60 games in any year of his career up until that point. I think it was simply a one-off thing for him, and the fact that he doesn't really have a big place in Portland's rotation, with them trading for Jrue Holiday, with them already having guys like Shaedon Sharpe, Deni Avdija, Jeremy Grant, Chris Murray, he definitely is not a high priority within the rotation, and probably would be attainable on the trade market. So potentially getting a great defensive option like Matisse Thybulle, can guard and match up 1 through 3 and sometimes even 1 through 4, is a great defensive playmaker, nearly having an average of 2 steals per game in only 21 minutes per game, nearly 3 of them per 36 minutes, also becoming a decent 3-point shooting option, during the past 3 years now shooting roughly 36.3% from 3. You know, I think it would actually fit pretty well for their team. Also, the fact that he's only 28, so would fit the Luka Doncic timeline, quote unquote. I like the trade potential or trade option of Matisse Thybulle. You know, if it only takes something like Gabe Vincent or Maxi Kleber with a second round draft pick or maybe a future first round draft pick swap, I definitely would do that and definitely would have a lot of interest in doing that too. And well, between the 5 of Matisse Thybulle, Chris Middleton, Kyle Anderson, Amir Coffey, and Jalen Bridges, give me any combination of them to address their 3&D wing need and I would be pretty happy with it. Bridges on the two-way contract, also maybe Arthur Kluma, then any additional one of Coffey, Anderson, Middleton, or Thybulle, I think that would directly address their need and would be enough to fill it too. But with all of that being said, what do you guys think? How do you feel about the Lakers' current need for a 3&D wing? How desperate and how dire of a need do you think it is? Can they afford to wait to address it? Maybe with the buyout market later in the season, potentially after the trade deadline? Or do you think they need to immediately address it, both with a two-way contract and with either a free agent option or a trade option? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one. And if you enjoyed the video, then I'll greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell to never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day or night.